Hello everybody and welcome to the HTML All Things Podcast, episode 95, When Coding is Not Right for You. I'm your host, Matt Lawrence, and I'm joined again by my co-host, Mike Horan. If you've been enjoying the podcast so far and you want to support us, there's a couple of ways that you can do that. You can review us on Apple Podcasts or on the podcast platform that you're listening to this on. You can also check us out on Patreon. There's only a couple of tiers, but the $3 tier will give you a shout out in the podcast, and we will share a link to your website in our show notes. And the most important one is just to tell your friends that we're here and ready to be listened to. And if you or your friends are ready to go a step further, you can come hang out in our Discord server. We got tons of people in there chatting away, giving off podcast suggestions as this episode is themed after, talking about different coding things, asking questions, etc., etc. So come and hang out with us there. But as we always do, weekly pain points. So Mike, please take it away.
All right. Weekly pain point this week is needing a break. I've been kind of getting burnt out over the last few months, I would say, ever since COVID started, with the pressure of COVID and all the work kind of ramped up even, and I'm not complaining about that because it's great to have a job at this time. It's just been a lot of work and very little time to just kind of have for myself. So this weekend I kind of just took a break, took half a Friday off and took all of Monday off to give myself a little bit of an extra long weekend. And yeah, I just did some gardening, did some just workouts, relaxed, played some games, watched some TV, drank some beer, stuff like that. It was a really good, balanced weekend where I didn't do programming at all. And I didn't think about Hat even. I didn't think about my other, the other work that I have to do. Nothing, just pure house stuff and myself. So much needed, was great. Would highly recommend if anyone's in the same situation. What about you, Matt?
Cool. So my weekly pain point is actually COVID restrictions at work, and that's obviously not relating to our office or anything, as we don't have an office. It's relating to some client stuff. So I'm not going to get into the details of it, of course, for security purposes and that type of thing, confidentiality. However, it's just a matter of some of our clients, since we work with different clients, are sort of opening up a little bit more, and some are not, and we aren't. And so there's a bit of a desync in terms of how locked down we are versus how locked down they are. Also, I'm dealing with a family thing, which I'm not going to get into publicly, that requires me to be locked down a little bit more due to some immunocompromisation, if that's a word. So it's just a bit of a weird business versus personal versus world desync in our COVID, restrictions, I guess. Ontario, which is where we live, is slowly opening up, every day, every week or whatever. I don't really follow the news too closely, but we are slowly opening up. And so obviously there's going to be some desync here, but that is what my big problem was this week. But anyway, basically we are going to be talking about something that came right from our Discord server. And that is that, what coding is not right for you. And I really felt bad writing this title because I felt like it was really clickbaity and whatever, but it is true. There are times in which coding is not right for you. It's just the way it is. So I'm just going to dive right in here to the intro. I'm going to give this brief little introduction as if I haven't been doing that already. And then I'll kind of jump into the segments and we'll kind of see what I'm talking about. So this episode came straight from our Discord server this week, with a member asking us to tackle a common problem that we've all faced along our journey. After trying to do web development and hitting a roadblock, many of us will question whether we're able to code or even if we're capable of learning to code. And in this episode, we're going to explore signs that coding might not be right for you. This doesn't mean that these signs apply to everyone at every position, or that position, I mean your job position, whether you're a project manager or whatever you're doing, or that they cannot be overcome. These are just solely from our personal experiences and opinions. Now, I wrote most of these show notes, so they're mostly my personal experiences and opinions, but I'm sure Mike will add his take on them as well throughout the episode. So I want to just do a brief preamble to each of the two segments that are coming up. So segment 1, we'll be tackling when coding is right for you in terms of a professional setting. So something like a web dev agency to work at as a developer, for example. These points don't really affect people that just code for themselves or code just for fun. If you're a weekend coder that just likes to play with Arduinos and stuff like that, you do web development, or you just like playing with Arduinos to make your Christmas lights light up, obviously these sort of productivity-ish steps, if you will, don't really apply to you because you're just doing it for fun. It's your hobby. It's not your professional thing. And then also for segment number two is going to tackle roadblocks that are easy to hit along the way, but and these roadblocks make you want to quit, but that are not, right? So we're going to do a bit of a compare and contrast, are not clear-cut signs that coding isn't for you. So thanks to our Discord member for suggesting this topic, and let's just get right into it, I'd say. So segment number one, coding is not right for you. So I've divided this up into a few different segments. There's probably a whole bunch of reasons or high-level reasons as to why coding wouldn't be for somebody, why coding wouldn't be for you, but I've divided it into three sort of main headers that I've talked of, and then that I've thought of, and then I'll kind of talk about each one. So first one's going to be when you just want your vision executed. Second one is going to be when you can't work under pressure. That's cannot work under pressure. And when you need constant social interaction. So going right back to the beginning here, when you just want your vision executed. So it is very common for entrepreneurs to want to do everything themselves, even if what they're doing is complex, like coding. Coding is very complex. As a non-techie, so for example, if you're an artist, an accountant, a fisherman, whatever, you may have an idea for a website or an app experience for your customers. You might think, great, I can make this Instagram-like thing and it'll be great, and they can send me all these pictures of their fish or something like that. So you may think that it's a good idea to start learning how to code yourself so that you can create your product and enact that vision exactly the way you want. Now, I'm here to tell you, and again, these are my opinions, but I'm here to tell you that this is a bad idea because coding is very complex and brings with it many challenges that you just aren't straight up equipped to fix without years of experience or at least a lot of Googling and a lot of effort. Now this, coupled with the fact that your passion clearly lies within another field, like the art or the great outdoors, stuff like that, this will only result in you getting frustrated and possibly rushing the job if it gets done at all. We all know that, and even if you're in the tech field, that if you rush something out for a customer, like if you rush out even a coming soon screen, the coming soon screens for customers are usually not super well put together, or they're very obviously templated because they're not meant to be super quick. And if you're a person who is just doing this for the hustle and you just want your vision executed, you just want that cool app, you're going to be rushing each and every piece. You don't know that little transitions help. You don't know that having animations, CSS animations help. You don't know that there's an easily readable format and a non-easily readable format in terms of typography and font size and that type of thing. You don't know that stuff because you're just not into this. You're out there out on your boat fishing. You're out there painting. Whatever you're doing, you just don't know that type of stuff. Now, there comes the support aspect of an idea where you'll be responsible for fixing bugs and other things as well. So let's say you put your app together and it's all done, and even if it's kind of crappy, you do manage to get an audience. That support aspect is not going anywhere. You'll have to fix those bugs. You'll have to interact with customers that just maybe they aren't experiencing a bug but think they are, or that they just need help signing up or whatever it is. You need to add new updates to the product, so different screen resolutions come out, higher DPI screens, so now your stuff looks blurry, you got to update your stuff. You need to be there for those things as it's your idea. You need to add new updates. You need to add new features to stay up, because if you're successful, even if your app idea is thrown together, you're going to have people come after you, and you're going to have people come after you in terms of competitors. They're going to build an app that's better than yours, so then you got to one-up them, etc., etc. And all of this, even though it's a lot, is just the tip of the iceberg. Your app will need branding. It's going to need marketing. It's going to need art. It's going to need graphic design. It's going to need UX design, UI design, etc., etc., etc. All of which just adds onto this enormous plate of learning to code in the first place. And this is especially true if you don't have any skills in those other areas as well. The artist in you maybe you're just an artist professionally, and you might have all these other things, graphic design, UI design, or at least enough of it where you could do it and not hate it. But learning to code just to execute your vision, it just doesn't compute. It just doesn't make any sense. And so, and just as a sort of capstone to this thing is, when you only want to code to execute a singular vision and not because you're interested in coding itself, then coding is not right for you. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think what I'm going to do with with all these segments is I'm going to try to play devil's advocate with each one of these.
Cool.
And just as a preface, I agree with everything that you're saying. A lot of everything that you're saying has very valid points, but I just want to give it from another perspective to maybe not scare away some people that like to just provide another set of eyes on the other side of it. And I'm sure you've thought about this too, Matt. It's just not written down here, which is fine because we have to get it out. So with this one, this is the hardest one for me to kind of devil's advocate because I completely agree with this. If you're an entrepreneur, if your skill is being a marketer, if your skill is like coming up with that idea, there's no reason for you to learn to code if you can sell that idea, if you can, tell a team, like get a team together and all that. If you're that kind of person, or if you have that kind of capital assets and stuff like that, and you can do that, your money is better spent giving it to better developers to get you a better product right off the bat. That's 100% true. This is the best one. But on the devil's advocate side of things, if you're just a person, you're sitting at home, you have a lot of time on your hands, and you have this idea of, let's say, selling gift boxes online. You're good at putting gifts together, like you're really good at gifting. And you want to do that. It's a small idea, stuff like that. In those kinds of cases, there are certain cases where it's actually okay to get a little bit more involved in the project and spin it up yourself. Now, that doesn't mean going out and learning JavaScript, HTML, CSS. That's probably what more this is talking about, like the coding is not right for you. But picking up something like Squarespace or Wix to do it, that's not necessarily coding, but it is, you are hands-on with that. You do have to do a lot of the maintenance of it and stuff like that. And you do have to get the layouts, the UX. Like there is a lot to it still. Not everyone wants to do that, but it is a way for you to be in control of your project. It is a way for you to save some money on the coding aspect. And when it's a small enough project, or when it's just at the beginning and you're just trying to get your foot in the door, I don't think there's any problem with that. I think that's why those tools are there. I think it's a great way for these kinds of people, for this exact group of people, when you just want your vision executed as quickly as possible, those tools are for you. If you're not in the stage of like, you're an entrepreneur already, you already have the capital assets, you already, if you have those things, then your money is way better spent getting something professionally built and get your idea out there in the best possible form. Then this is the one that I agree with the most. But yeah, I'll pass it back to you, Matt, to continue.
Yeah, that is a good point though. Absolutely. That there are consumer tools that replace the need for coding in certain aspects. There's logo makers out there even, for example. So, if you're just starting out and you just want to get started and you just want to see if people are interested, or if you're a podcaster, you're an audio engineer and you just really wanted to get something up and running, you can absolutely use a consumerized tool. Mike and I could build a Patreon-like thing for ourselves, not for as a non-platform, just for ourselves, and have tiers and that type of thing. But no, we're not going to do that. We're not going to spend our time doing that. We're going to use the consumer product, and we're going to use Patreon. We're going to use that product because we're not going to spend time on that. And that's perfect for people that literally don't even know how Patreon or how it works, or what even a database is. They don't know what it is. Of course, use those consumer products. These are absolutely specifically about people that are like, I want like the full control, so I'm going to learn how to code. It's like, no, that's ridiculous. It's too much. You might love cars, but if you hate fixing them, you're not going to learn how like the oil viscosity works in certain cars or something. You're not going to do that, right? You're going to let a mechanic handle that, and you're going to drive the car. That's basically how it is. So second one here then, second high level point is going to be when you cannot work under pressure. So whether it's different businesses in the same field or completely different fields altogether, the amounts of pressure that a workplace puts on you varies wildly. So I just want to point that out, that every job has some sort of pressure. It could be near zero. It could be, if you're talking about a 0 to 100 scale, it could be 100. It could be extremely stressful. 100 stress. It could be 1. Whatever. Like it varies so wildly in all the fields and everything like that. So an example would be typically, let's say, a startup with limited funds and short deadlines. That's going to be go 100% of the time, and that can be very, very stressful. And the same goes actually for bigger companies too. So you might think, oh, the startups are stressful, I'll go to the bigger companies. Well, that's not necessarily where you want to be. Could you imagine being on the front lines of, let's just use a bank in Canada, TD Canada Trust, total just example. TD Canada Trust, TD. Let's imagine that, I mean, they have online tools. That's a real thing. And let's imagine that you are right on the front lines. You're one of the head guys that keeps that website up. All of a sudden, their entire global website network or whatever goes down. That's not something that is a non-stress with no pressure. That's not something you can look at next week. That's something you're going to look at right now, like right immediately, right now. Drop everything, hang up the phone if you're on a call, and start looking right now. Of course, right? So that's there's some pressure, and anyway, so sometimes it's just, if you want to take it out of this completely, and you want to say like, no, I'm not going to be on the front lines. I'm going to work for a big company. I'm not going to be on the front lines, and so I'm going to have a stable job. That's possible, but there's sometimes just general pressure, if you will. So that general pressure can be just to hit deadlines, and sometimes those deadlines are quickly approaching, or sometimes they weren't planned out properly, and therefore they didn't give you enough time. And a 3-week job was quoted at a 1-week deadline, and so there's some panic there. There's that there's some pressure there. There is some pressure there. And developers can sometimes, depending on the size of the company, luck out, okay, by having an IT department there. Sometimes that IT department will absorb most of the day-to-day issues that come up. The IT department works with the software that you're putting out, and so they'll deal with it and that type of thing. And then they'll only really pass it off to you if it's something very serious, or if a major bug is surfaced and a bunch of clients are complaining about it, that type of thing. But it isn't guaranteed. Like, there's no job out there that has no pressure. Even a gardener, if you want to talk about being like super chill, the first thing comes to mind is a gardener. Even a gardener has a deadline. Put that fountain in. We got to go put the next door neighbor's fountain in. We got to hurry up here. That's a little bit of pressure. And so if you can't work under pressure and you can't work under those type of conditions, you might luck out and get that IT department, and you might find a super chill office, but more often than not, developers and specifically tech jobs are under a lot of pressure. Same with IT positions. Again, maybe some of the higher level IT guys are under less pressure. That's usually a perk of being a higher level IT, but there's still pressure no matter what. There's still deadlines. There's still the stuff like that. There's still always the possibility of an incident happening and something coming down. And if you're in those startup companies, you are going to get a little bit of everything. You might be a little bit of IT today. You might be a little bit of a copywriter tomorrow. You're going to be all over the place. And so some people love that stuff, and some people love bouncing around, and other people just can't take it. And so that's why when you can't work under pressure, you're just donezo. And so as another capstone, if you will, if you're unable to handle, checking your phone in the morning only to see that everything's kicked off and you're needed urgently to fix an issue that you've never even heard of, then coding is not right for you.
So with this one, again, mostly agree, but there is an asterisk where there is, and Matt kind of mentioned it, that there are certain jobs that are more lax, but it's not even about being lax. You can have a certain type of skill set. Like, let's say you're an SQL developer that has high experience in developing SQL databases, the structures, the schemas, all that. In certain instances, you can state in your contract that you have a 48-hour response time, period. Like, for any response. If you're a high enough level expert, it's something that you can put forward. Now, not everyone's going to agree to it, because like Matt said, a lot of the tech companies out there are go, are like, we need to get this done in 2 hours or less, otherwise you're fired, stuff like that. There's a lot of that. But there are a lot of people that are just looking for good developers to set up their infrastructure, and then, then hire some people on to actually maintain it and stuff like that. And that's where maybe the niche that you could find if you really don't want to work under pressure. So if you're get involved with something that you really enjoy and that you're really good at, that's a big thing. Like, you have to be really good at something. If you don't want to be into the front lines and stuff like that, you got to be the expert in this case. But if you're really good at something, you can put yourself out there as someone that works with a longer turnaround time, but you're going to get the job done really well, and you're going to get a really good base for that company and stuff like that. So there are ways around it. There's probably other ways around the pressure thing, but in general, Matt's correct. Like, you got to be able to handle being able to, receive a call every once in a while in the evening or on a weekend and having to handle it. When you're receiving calls every day in the evening and every day on the weekend, and like multiple calls, and you're constantly going around, then there's something wrong with that workplace. But any workplace has mess ups, stuff happens. If it's once in a while, that's something you have to be able to handle. And it's one of those things that go hand to hand with being a developer.
And in terms of those workarounds, actually, some of them will be something like on-shift work. So, we brought up TD as an example. Again, this is a total hypothetical. We're not actually talking about how they work, but they could have people on shift in terms of if maybe you don't need to work late because they have a 24/7 crew, you work a 12-hour shift and then they work a 12-hour shift in their IT department or something. And so you just hand off whatever it is. So there's pressure as in you got to start looking at it right now and give progress updates, and you might not understand the issue. That's a big one that people collapse under pressure when they see an issue that they don't even know how to tackle at all. That's a big one. But it helps when you're like, this issue came in at 5, I'm done at 6, and then at 6, Jim's going to come in, I got to keep him up to speed, send him all my stuff, and then I'm going home. That might help. Bigger companies will have that 24/7 crew or an on-call where you go home and you're like, if this is urgent enough, engage the on-call person type of thing. And so that helps. On-call is another one too. That's a lot of pressure if you do that. So, and also another thing, excuse me, that Mike had mentioned too, was the different, if you're receiving a phone call all the time, that type of thing. I saw a thread recently, and just to kind of mention in relation to what we're talking about here is some people were commenting as to whether or not developers, I think we may have talked about it on the show too, as to whether we should be doing constant overtime. And there's some places that some people that were saying, I've been a developer for 10 plus years and I've never worked overtime. And anyone who has us work overtime is indeed mismanaging things. So sometimes you can luck out with companies. Sometimes the company is short-staffed. Sometimes the company is scummy and they're trying to take advantage of the people. Sometimes they're in a bind and they're not trying to take advantage of you, but they have to maybe not take advantage, but they have to leverage their people and be like, hey, stay an extra hour every day because we need help, something like that. So the situations vary wildly, and it's just a matter of whether you personally can handle that wild variance, I guess, is how that works. The next high level point here is going to be when you need constant social interaction. So despite what some newfangled offices say, there are many times when you're programming and you're just alone, you're just sitting there typing away. It's very common to see people in an office setting sitting there quote unquote alone with their headphones on, completely absorbed in what they're doing on their screen. Programming requires a lot of typing, obviously, a lot of problem solving, and innovative thinking. And as a result, it can't really be done while talking to other people. Collaboration, team meetings, and helping one another certainly does happen. There is some of that social interaction, of course, but it doesn't mean that you'll be chatting away all day as you would in, say, like a hotel concierge position. You need time to sit down and just code away because you need to solve those problems and actually just eventually code it out. And it's hard to talk to somebody constantly or deal with their problem while you're problem solving yourself. So again, as a capstone, this is a bit of a shorter one. If you're a social butterfly that needs social interaction throughout the day, then coding is not right for you.
So with this one, the easiest way around this, in my opinion, is consulting. And there's quite a bit of consulting jobs out there for coders where you'll kind of be in a pair programming situation where you'll almost exclusively be in a one-on-one situation or a one-on-team situation, looking at people's codes, talking about the code at the same time as you're looking at it as they're coding and correcting little things here and there, maybe showing different structures. I could see that being a way around the need for constant social interaction. Of course, having said that, getting to the point where you can become a consultant most likely will require you to put your head down with your headphones on and learning all these concepts that you're going to be consulting on. So it is kind of like a, snake biting the tail situation where you do need to be able to do both. So it's a little bit harder to get around. But if you're willing to put in the time initially, being a little bit more, less social interaction, you can transition to a job with much more social interaction in the future, like consulting, like being a team lead. Stuff like that will require a lot more interaction than just being, a lead developer or just a senior developer on a project.
Consulting, and you and I had actually just discussed as well project management. If there's those managers in each position where they can be technical and not, or even non-technical, even if the team is technical. But if you are able to master your project planning skills and you're able to get into that third position, you're going to be talking to people all day and just relaying technical stuff back to non-technical staff and vice versa, that type of thing. So that'll also work as well. So that kind of ends that does end segment number 1. Coding is not right for you, and we'll kind of jump right into segment number 2 here, which is too eager to quit. So programming is problem solving in the language of computers. It's taking a problem like I'd like to be able to control my lamps from this website and engineering a solution within the capabilities of your computing environment to eventually create something like the Google Home app, for example. So this means that programming is no easy feat. People never said that programming was easy, just that it's possible. And to be clear, if you think you've heard that before, I think I've heard that before in a podcast as well. I just don't remember where I heard it, so credit
that's to... It. You're coining the phrase. There's Matt's coining the phrase.
Jesus.
Yep, that's it.
Anyway.
Up in arms. Add him at Twitter.
Well, if you've heard it before, I didn't copy it. I'm giving loose credit to thank you to whoever said that, because I like that quote. Anyway, hitting walls or being unable to think of the next step in your problem solving is a natural reaction. Is a natural. Hang on a minute. Can't read and speak apparently at the same time. Hitting walls or being unable to think of the next step in your problem solving is a natural reaction. So when being presented with a difficult problem to think through, so you might just think to yourself, you hit something really. I'm trying to think of something I hit recently where, I've hit a wall trying to pump RSS feeds around freaking services. But anyway, not going to go there. But like, I just don't know where to go now. So now I'm thinking, now I've hit a brick wall, and you're like, do I make my own service? Is this something that I'm not supposed to be doing? Like, what do I do? And those issues get really complex when you're really deep into a project and you have some sort of weird bug with like a database or something like that. And that can really, really screw you up. You're going to be like, I don't know how to handle this. And it's a natural reaction to hit a brick wall and not even know how to really engineer it. And this is especially true if you're entering into uncharted waters, either completely, so inventing something totally new, or if it's new to you. So there's two, I'll divvy those up. So when it's completely new, so you're inventing something actually brand new. So if you're pioneering something, like maybe you're one of the first people to try out a new programming language, or a different library, for example, it can be difficult to see your project stall out while others around you don't. And what I mean by that is there's so many libraries and so many tools and so many things out there where somebody might be making something that competes with you that is actually on an older, maybe they're just using straight PHP, for example, and you're trying to use some other newfangled thing, let's just call it PHP 2, I don't know, some brand new thing, and you want to pioneer this because you think it's going to be better performance and stuff like that, and you're going to have trouble with that. Like, you're going to have trouble building on PHP 2, and it's going to suck when you look over and see that they're further ahead than you. But you are, you're kind of not inventing something new, but you're doing something totally new and totally new to the community as well. They would get stuck, but they're not doing the same thing. And that's sort of what I mean by that.
So just an example of that right now, a really relevant one is Deno. I don't know if you heard about what that is, but it's a Node. I think it's a Node replacement almost. So one of the creators of Node has started to create a new backend platform.
Okay.
That's built on Rust, I believe. I'm not too up with the technology of it, but I know it has like some advantages over Node and stuff. But essentially, it's a completely new system that's trying to be better than Node. So it's a very similar situation where they're building something new, but Node already exists and it is going forward. So they're probably going through a lot of like roadblocks and hitting walls and stuff like that, and seeing Node kind of perform over them.
Even something as simple as making a button, Node and whatever else, like Node with whatever add-ons for the front end and all the rest of it can easily make a button, click and do something, like fire off an email or something. Whereas I'm sure these guys, they probably have to think about that a little longer. They have to think like, damn, like how does this work? It's rough because somebody else might be doing this, might be getting the same result and not stalling out. But that's just because you're pioneering something. You're in a completely new piece. And also, even if it isn't something completely new, like if it's just new to you, right? So it's easy to be overwhelmed when you see other people excelling at a particular programming language or maybe a type of programming while you're struggling. But what you don't see from those people is how they got where they are. Since you're new at it, of course you're going to do worse than them. Of course, 100%. And there's no deadline for catching up to them necessarily. I mean, unless your boss is yelling at you to get something done, but he's not going to say, get as good as Jim over there. That's ridiculous. So they might have a background, that person, Jim in this case, Jim might have a background in something similar that propelled them forward, or they might only excel at one thing. They might just really excel at this RSS thing. And then you're just like, how the hell, like, what am I doing here? Like, why, you're getting stuck. Meanwhile, you're good at 4 or 5 other things, but you feel like an idiot because you can't get this RSS feed to work. And he's just ripping through RSS feeds, but he would probably feel like an idiot if you showed him those other 4 things. So it's a two-way street there. And then so after you've been programming for a while, so this is sort of another kind of high-level point. So after you've been programming for a while, having gotten through a bunch of the different issues, and you've been there, you've done bug fixes, you've hit roadblocks, and you're still there, and whatever else, you'll gain a good amount of confidence that you'll be able to do anything. You'll think, wow, I've solved all these things, I've built these 3 projects, and blah 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 blah, etc. And then inevitably, you're going to hit another brick wall in your troubleshooting. Maybe troubleshooting a bug or seeing some new thing, some new library or something for the first time. You're gonna hit a brick wall. Or maybe engineering a solution. Someone comes to you and says like, "Hey, can we add MP3 transcoding into this thing?" And you're like, "What? Like what? Like what's going on?" And so you might get completely smashed right into a brick wall. All that confidence is shattered basically. And at that point, it can be so easy to think to yourself that you actually don't understand anything and that it's time to throw in the towel. And you think like, oh, I'm a complete newbie. I have no idea anything about playing MP3 files. Like what am I doing? Like I must be an idiot. Like MP3 files, like they're super common. Why don't I know how to put them into this player and play them? That type of thing. But everyone gets stuck at every level of programming, and it's something to keep in mind. Every single level. You could have programmed since Atari, the original Atari. You could have been a programmer then, and you could be a programmer now, and they're going to hit brick walls too. You're going to hit brick walls at the beginning through the end of your career. Taking a break, sleeping on it, or just switching tasks to something else then coming back actually does wonders for these type of problems. Even if there's a deadline coming up, sometimes you just have to take like 2 hours off. You take 2 hours off, you leave, you come back, and you just nail it out of the park. Prime example, yesterday I was working on a site and I just really wasn't feeling it. Really, like I was like, I know this has to get done, but this is a disaster. And so I stopped doing that. I started working on a little bit of hat stuff, and then I came back today and I literally finished it in like 10, 15 minutes. And I just ripped through it. And that's just that sometimes you just need to give your brain a break because I'm not a brain expert, but it's in like a rut. It just doesn't, probably what it is it probably doesn't want to think about it anymore. It's like, I'm done with this. Like, I don't want to do this. So you need to take a break, take a step back, and it does actually do wonders for stuff. And also, don't be afraid to Google answers constantly. People always seem to shy away from that. They think, oh, I'm experienced now. I don't need Google. I don't need help. Well, you might not need help in some of the areas that you used to Google. Now you might be able to say, hey, that's probably the database. Hey, that's probably this. Hey, that's probably that. A prime example would be IT. If I see certain behavior from a computer, I can generally tell you 2 to 3 areas that it might be in. I can just look at it and be like, yep, it's probably this. If it's ticking, probably the hard drive. If it's not waking up from sleep, probably the GPU. I just know that stuff. And that stuff I used to Google, and I just know that stuff. But if I have a weird one where it always wakes up from sleep, but the screen's purple, well, my experience tells me GPU, but is it that? Because why is it still rendering properly just in purple? And so that would be a weird thing where I hit a brick wall and I would have to Google that. And so that's fine. Just Google it. Who cares, right? That's just the way it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And a big thing with this is all these points are trying to point out that it's not impossible. Like coding is difficult. There's a lot of instances in coding that are really difficult. But the point is, don't quit. Like if you're really into it, if you really want to be a coder, if you're actually like seriously dedicated to doing this as a job, you have to be prepared to not quit, because there's going to be a lot of points throughout your career where you're going to be like, no, I don't want to do this anymore. It's just the truth. Like you're going to have a situation where, like you said, you're going to have to build something new, something that hasn't been built before, or something that's been built, but you have to combine it with 15 different other things. And you're going to have a situation where you're like, I don't know how to do this. Like, I don't even know where to start. I don't want to do this. That's going to happen. And then the imposter syndrome is going to start setting in. That is absolutely going to happen to you. You have to be able to work through that. It's a skill that you develop over time. It's not something that you're going to be able to just pick up right away and just be able to power through everything, but it's something that you have to be willing to work on with yourself. Not everything is going to come easy. There's going to be some things that you're going to be better at than someone else. There's going to be some things you're going to be worse at, and it's just something you have to accept and move forward at your pace and not someone else's pace. You have to be willing to do that. That's the point that I think, the main point I think that you're trying to make, Matt, is like, don't be too eager to quit. If you are too eager to quit, then you're right. Coding is not right for you.
Yeah, that might be another point actually. Is if you're really eager to quit all the time, without hitting an issue, if you're just you start and you know what you're doing and you're just like, damn, I want to stop doing this, then maybe coding isn't right for you. But exactly. It's these roadblocks that will really sort of define you. These roadblocks and all these points that I just mentioned in segment 2 here are things that absolutely will make you eager to quit. You will want to stop doing them. But if you still want the end result, generally, if you still want the end result and you're willing to put in the work to do it, but it's an external circumstance, so maybe the deadline is the thing that's stressing you out and you're like, damn, I don't want to do this. Or maybe it's the office itself, and maybe the whole business is mismanaged that you're working in, and you're just getting absolutely slammed and you're getting beat up. You might be like, I can't be a developer. I don't want to do this anymore. But maybe it's a matter of changing jobs. I would say an easier way to think of it is like, you and I just had this conversation, Mike, about our own projects as a business versus doing client work, and what motivations are different and how we treat different ones, and just sort of like a structural catch up as to if Hat has an issue, how do we handle that? If a client has an issue, how do we handle that type of thing? And in my opinion, if you can take the project that you're working on and you can imagine you doing it yourself in your own basement or your own office or wherever the hell you code, and you think to yourself, this is my project. I'm not being yelled at. Maybe your customer's yelling at you, but I'm not being yelled at by a boss of some sort. And, I built this platform and the customers really want this up. Are you stressed out about fixing the issue? Do you want the issue fixed, or are you so done that even if you own that project, you don't want to fix it? I think that is a big thing. If we build the Hat site up or when we build the Hat site, and then the Hat site, falls apart, and this is Mike and my project, if I don't have the motivation to fix that site, then we're in trouble. Of course, there's issues in which, like, maybe if I'm burnt out due to something else, I might not want to fix it. But in general, on a good day, if my motivation is not to fix that site, we got a problem. It means that maybe I don't want to code this thing anymore. I don't want to work on Hat anymore. I don't want to work on whatever. That's sort of where this came from, was the thought of, are you being like, oh, I have to fix this, like, this is so dumb, or you're being like, oh, I have to fix this because I want I want it up. Do you want to still reach that level? That's sort of where this second segment came from. Gotcha.
But yeah, like, regardless, it's just you need to have that mindset to be able to push through. And it's, again, we're not trying to gatekeep or anything like that. This episode's not about gatekeeping and being like, oh, you can't code. No, that it's actually the opposite of that. These things, these conditions where you can't code, in quotes, isn't saying that a single person can't code. No, it's saying that you have to be willing to go through this process. You have to be willing, you yourself have to make the situation for yourself to become okay with actually doing these things, to be able to go through the troubleshooting, to be able to, code it yourself, to be able to live without constant interaction, to be able to work under pressure, stuff like all these things you have to be willing to do.
Yeah. I mean, it's a hard road, and I think that if you focus, and it's a hard road to do anything. I don't know what's going on over there, Mike. I hear like someone who like Minecrafting your home,
bashing on the freaking balcony walls. I don't know what the hell's going on.
Just beating the crap out of their own home there, but
yeah.
But it's one of those things where everything you do is a hard road. Learning to stream was a hard road, and that was a hobby. But I stream games, so I I was motivated enough. I wanted to do it enough, and then I just did it. This podcast, sometimes we're super tired. Like, I've been working crazy hours. You worked crazy hours too, and took some time off. And we still delivered the episode last week when you were burnt out, and this week too. Like, I'm sure you could use this time to get ahead on some projects or something, but we still do that. That's, I think, what it is if you're willing to show up and you want to show up. Maybe sometimes, like, there are episodes where one of us isn't feeling it. We're too busy, we're tired, but we still get it done, right? Or sometimes we delay it or something if there's a long weekend, of course. But, like, we still do the thing. If it's to the point where you're just like, damn, like, I really don't want to freaking record today. Like, if you wake up and say that, like, it's like, all right, well, this, maybe you don't actually want to be a person that's on podcasts, for example, right? Taking out of coding. So, but I think we'll move on to we'll hear Mike talk a little more here. He's got a pretty juicy PWA web news. So, Mike, please take it away, sir.
Okay, so web news this week is actually a piece of web news, which is becoming rarer and rarer for us. We usually, web news is usually about multitudes of topics, from technology to, UX to just how we're feeling at that certain time. But right now, it's a piece of actual web news. Microsoft is spearheading PWA support. So I read an article, we'll link it in the show notes on Medium, about how Microsoft is making Edge the best browser for PWAs. And I went through it, and there's a lot of really good points. So with PWAs, if you're not familiar, they're progressive web apps. And essentially what you do is you create a website, put in some config file, a couple of different things like icons and stuff like that, and it'll automatically detect that it's a PWA and allow you to install it as a quote-unquote native-like experience on your platform. And the reason that it's interesting is because it's starting to become useful on almost any platform out there. Like, Safari has them, Microsoft has them built into their regular desktop OSs. Then the mobile OSs all have them. So iOS and Android both have native PWA support to a pretty high level at this point. Tablet OSs have them, like iOS tablet. iPad OS has PWA support. Almost every platform out there. I'm trying to think of one that doesn't. I'm not sure if Linux does, but I'm sure it does, because I don't see why it wouldn't.
I'm not sure if Linux does, but I'm sure it does.
I'm pretty sure it does. I'm just not like, I don't have an article saying that it does have PWA support. But regardless, right, most of the platforms, and definitely most of the user base out there, has access to these PWAs. And all it takes is a couple extra steps on top of building a website or a web app. That's the beauty of it. So what is Microsoft doing that's a little bit different now to make PWAs better is creating new APIs like customizable title bars. They have native file system access, which is pretty big. Like, you can access the regular File Explorer from it. They're adding badges to the Microsoft Store. Now, all the other stores currently have badges. Microsoft is now adding them, just to be clear. And the big thing is that they're giving you an easy path to the Microsoft Store. Now, again, they've already had an easy path. And the easy path is literally type in your URL into PWA Builder, which is a Microsoft app, and it will create a packaged application that you can then automatically submit to the Microsoft Store. So as long as you have the PWA built as a PWA, it's a one-step process. That's it. And you have it on an actual app store with all that app store's capabilities in place, which is really cool. But what they're doing now is they're adding support for the Chromium edition inside of PWA Builder. So before, it was only accessible with the Microsoft Edge edition without Chromium, which had a lacking of APIs. Like, it didn't have all these file system APIs, didn't have the badges, didn't have the customizable title bars. It didn't have the stuff that I just talked about, plus some other things were severely lacking from the Edge version. Now it's using the Chromium one. In the next few months, the PWA Builder will catch up to it as well, which is really cool. So there's a lot of other things that are going on with PWAs. For instance, I keep my ear to the ground pretty intensely, because one of our apps in production for a client that I work for is a PWA. And we've had an issue where the camera package wasn't being able to work inside of a Safari system, inside of iOS Safari. So we weren't able to use one of our functions in our app because of that limitation. Recently, and I'm talking like 3 weeks ago, in the newest iOS version, I think it was like 13.4, they just added support for camera functionality for PWAs. So essentially, Android already had it, Microsoft has it, now iOS has it. There's almost no difference now between the Safari version. I believe the only big difference is that they don't have push notifications in PWAs for iOS. So you can't push notify. If that's something that Apple is working on, I'm not sure. I hope they are, but it's not a huge deal right now, in my opinion. It's still something that you can probably work around with emails and stuff like that. But yeah, so it seems like it's becoming a first-class citizen. It seems that PWAs are becoming pretty mainstream. I know like Twitter PWA I've talked about before. There's plenty more now. Like I'm seeing more and more pop up. I think Microsoft Outlook has a PWA that you can install. What's more? I think that you named a few more. Matt, the last time we
Messages. I actually use a bunch. So on Windows here, so Messages does like Android Messages, the SMS and RCS platform. I believe the WhatsApp web version, I believe, is a PWA. See, the thing is, and just to mention this as an aside, you can actually install a bunch of apps as like a home screen icon on Windows now, and so sometimes I forget if it's actually a PWA. The Messages one for sure is. Google Drive is one as well. But sometimes it'll have that install thing, but sometimes you can just go into the thing and just say add as home screen, and I just use it like a PWA even though it isn't. Because like a bunch of these apps require internet anyway, so if the internet goes out, I mean, I can't use it anyway.
Yeah. So one thing that they are actually adding is if it's a PWA now, you'll actually be able to install, manage, and uninstall the app from the programs in Windows. So it'll actually show up there as a regular native app. So that's one thing that Microsoft is adding in the upcoming releases, I think.
It kind of sounds like since they went to Edge Chromium, their innovation can shine, whereas they don't need to spend, I guess, that innovation on working on the Edge engine or whatever. They're able to just say like, okay, Chromium is what we're using. Now let's work on things like collections and sync and having our Microsoft account work in certain ways with this and PWAs. And they're able to take all that power and say, okay, like all that manpower and thought power and just say, okay, let's just do a bunch of other stuff, and which is pretty cool. The collections are cool. I haven't really used them. I've seen them in use. I probably will start using them. It's just, it's actually the same. To be honest, it's the same thing we're seeing on Android, where Microsoft now no longer needs to worry about Windows Phone, and so you're seeing Microsoft Launcher and Outlook and SwiftKey and all these other apps. There's tons of more. All these other apps shine and they link with computers, and they've partnered with Samsung, and then link to Windows is like a big thing, and OneDrive syncing right from the Samsung gallery is a big thing, and all that stuff, and all that stuff is huge. I got rid of OneDrive, the app, syncing my photo roll or camera roll, or how you want to call it, and now I sync via the gallery app from Samsung. I connected those two, and Samsung, that like because I did that in the gallery app, it was smart enough, and it even gave me a little notification saying we noticed that you were syncing via the camera roll in the OneDrive app, and we've turned that off. And so it's because I'm sorry, but the gallery in OneDrive is garbage. But the gallery on Samsung is nice because like they're the person that runs the camera, of course, and runs the device. And so you get a better viewing experience while still being able to use your Microsoft thing. Now, I will say that they probably should upgrade the photo viewing experience on OneDrive, but this is still an innovation that we're seeing, which is super cool. One of the things I had from one of my Samsung phones was I had a Tab Pro S, so maybe this is more or less a Samsung innovation, but I have a Tab Pro S, and I had the S8 Plus, and what I did was it had some sort of security chip in both or something, where before Windows Hello was really a big thing, I could unlock my computer from my phone. I would use my fingerprint on my phone, and it would unlock my computer, or my Tab Pro S, and like there's cool innovations in that regard as well. Like there's some pretty sweet things happening in that regard. And so you're kind of seeing Microsoft take off with innovation when they don't have to maintain a whole platform and a whole bunch of OS crap. I mean, obviously the Windows, but you know what I mean.
I completely agree. And I give full kudos to Microsoft to be able to integrate with all these different systems. It's something that Apple refuses to do for the most part. Like, they do it in little things here and there, but they really don't want to allow other ecosystems into their ecosystem. Like, they're very much against that. Everyone knows that. That's their thing. Microsoft is going the exact opposite direction. Like, they want every ecosystem. Like, they have Linux almost fully built into Microsoft at this point, and they're only expanding that. Like, you're going to have Linux subsystems, being able to run multiple Linux subsystems in Microsoft at some point. Like, it's going to be crazy, which is awesome because there's a lot of things you can do with Linux that you can't do with Windows. And if you can combine those two, you're almost accounting for everything that a user needs to do. Other than the fact that there's some Mac OS stuff that they're just not letting people do, like use Xcode and stuff like that. So I like the direction that Microsoft is going, whether it be for profits or for like community management, appeasing communities, stuff like that. I don't really care as long as they keep going in that direction. Just keep being open, keep doing innovative things, keep using already great platforms like the Samsung mobile gallery, like Chromium, like stuff like that, and building on top of it, making it better than the competitors. Just build features. That's what we want. Everyone wants like really good features on a good base. So yes, ideally, in an ideal world, Edge would have been amazing, and it would have been a great competitor to Safari and Chrome in an ideal world. But the problem is that not only would it have to be amazing, you would have had to drive adoption. So you would have to put a ton of time and money into marketing and getting out of that stigma of Internet Explorer.
100%.
So that all that money that they're putting into now building features would have had to go into marketing to be able to get some. And they did do that for a long time. They thought that they would that was their goal. Edge was supposed to be their way out of Internet Explorer's shadow.
Mm-hmm.
But they didn't. They couldn't get there because all that money that they put in, they just couldn't build Edge up to Chromium standard or Firefox standard. They just couldn't get they didn't understand how to update the browser. Like, they had to update only during major updates, which is crazy to me. Stuff like that. Like, there was certain things that were extremely lacking, and they decided to abort and go the other way, which is I applaud them for that. Now, another thing that I want to mention with PWAs. Is there is limitations because it's a web app after all. A web app is a web app, and you're only going to be able to do so much. Like, web apps are very heavily single-threaded applications. Mm-hmm. There are some things you can do on separate threads, but you don't really have much control over that. You can do certain calculations and stuff, but what I'd love to see come out of this is once everyone adopts these PWAs and they become mainstream for a lot of very common applications, stuff like Instagram, stuff like Facebook, stuff that doesn't need crazy processing but could use it, I would love for money to go into developing the JavaScript engine to be better performant. So get something going. Like, I know WebAssembly is a thing. Mm-hmm. Get that into more mainstream hands. I know service workers is a thing. Get great apps using service workers everywhere. Get threading to work properly. Get as much performance out of JavaScript or whatever you can build on top of JavaScript, like something that or whatever replaces JavaScript, whatever. Get something out there that's better performant so that every application can be built in a PWA format. Because right now you're still limiting apps. Like, you can't do everything in a PWA. It's just not possible. You can build basic apps, news sites, messaging sites, all that stuff, great in PWAs.
Oh, yeah. Easy.
Yeah, exactly. As soon as you go something a little bit heavier, like media management, something like, filters for cameras, stuff like that, you're starting to go down because PWAs don't have native access to the camera. That's another big problem. The problem that I have to run into, where you just don't get the quality that you would get from a native access API. Like Camera 2 API on Android. I can't remember what the one on iOS is called, but there is a separate API to access native camera features on iOS that's only available for Swift and Objective-C, obviously. So those are the leaps that PWAs need to take next once the adoption is there. So right now we're getting there where adoption is like, I think only like a few months ago or a couple months ago, Matt, you and I were talking about how PWAs are dead.
Oh yeah,
and they're not a thing. Now all of a sudden, ever since that episode, which is really weird. They've all of a sudden had a resurgence.
Yeah, it was like starting at that point. It was almost like we gave someone a kick in the ass. It was like,
yeah, like,
come on, boys.
Oh my
like,
god, what are these guys talking about? We have fucking everything in PWAs. So
and I'm using them like crazy. Like, it's hard to get me to switch over things. I'm using them like crazy. I just realized, that Twitter. I'm on Twitter.com right now. I wanted to check Twitter. Twitter has a PWA, has a little install icon here.
That was one of the first ones that had the PWA.
Damn.
And it worked pretty good. It's working better now, too. Like, they have updated their PWA support and stuff like that. Yeah, a lot of the time, because a lot of these lower power web devices are coming out, right? Like the Surface Go, the Chromebooks, all those things. That's where PWAs shine, right? Like, you don't need an app. You don't need a full baked in app where you can just load up a PWA for most of your tasks, like word processing, email, what else? Like anything else. Like, you don't need apps anymore. You don't need native apps unless you have something that's heavy. But again, when you're going heavy, then you're going to be using already probably better equipment than those low power devices. So those low power devices are driving the adoption of PWAs as far as I can see.
Yeah, there's a lot more when it comes to just using computers these days. It's a lot more about getting information across, sharing links, sharing like tweets and that type of thing. It's a lot about just getting information across, and so a lot of the computing is actually done in the cloud, right? Twitter, obviously, it's a big powerhouse because it has to process all these tweets, it has to show all these images, it has to show all these videos and all the rest of it. And so a lot of that is not done on your computer anymore. The big quote unquote consumer processor or processor heavy things, which would require the multiple threads and that type of thing, would be a little bit of video editing. And it would be a little bit because otherwise you're starting to get professional. Same with phone, camera. What do you call those things? Pictures. Good Lord. Picture editing, those type of things, photo editing, those type of things. That would be cool to do online as well. And you can do a little bit of that on Facebook and stuff, some trimming, some whatever. But it'd be cool to see, I don't know, a Photoshop PWA or something like that, or a very light version of Lightroom or something. Well, I think there might be one online or something. I can't remember now, but
there's stuff online that can edit photos and stuff, but it's not at the level of Photoshop.
That's exactly, I guess, what I'm trying to get at is like trying to a little bit more prosumer in that regard, but it would really benefit from having multiple threads and having multiple images. And so you're trying to overlay images and, whatever else people do with their vacation photos, if they're a little bit of a home photographer, if you will. That's sort of what would be awesome to see. Different games, for example, would be great to see. Different games and stuff like that. Just different ways to compute, because once that door opens, we're going to see a bunch of people come up with innovative stuff. We're going to see a bunch of crazy stuff come out. Maybe we won't need OBS anymore to stream. You'll just use some PWA, and that'll be awesome. Transcoding and all the rest of it will be done on your computer, but it's done via this PWA, and all you do is sign into your account and just install this PWA, and bam, you're already good to go. And that's offered by Twitch or something maybe in the future. And that would be crazy, because if you're processing a 4K image, that's a lot, and you should have more than one core, I'd hope, working on. So stuff like that. And that's just off the top. We didn't know where apps were going to go, and look at them. They're everywhere now. And PWAs, like Mike was saying, a few weeks ago, or maybe it was months, but whatever, it was very recently, we were just like, man, PWAs suck. And now I'm using them like crazy. Like they're all over my computer. Like I got a bunch of them. Yeah. So we don't know where it's going to go, but once those innovations come to light, it's just going to take right off. And I'm really excited to see where something like Edge goes. Absolutely. Edge is super interesting to me. And I'm interested to see where the future of pretty much everything goes. So a prime example is I just upgraded recently to Xbox Game Pass Ultimate. So now that's Xbox Live Gold, Xbox Game Pass for the Xbox, and then Xbox Game Pass for my computer. And now I just have a whole crap ton of games. Like just games all over the place. Am I going to be able to play them all? No. But I'm going to be streaming a game tomorrow, and instead of me paying, well, in Canada, the average new game is $79.99, so $92-ish after taxes and sales taxes and all the rest of it. So instead of me paying $92, I'm paying $15-ish. I can't remember now, but $15-ish a month, and I'm getting my full gaming experience. That's really cool, and that's actually saving me money. Because if I just boot up a game every now and then instead of me buying a bunch of them, I haven't bought a game on my Xbox in a long time. Like, I shouldn't say that. It's like I haven't bought a lot of games on my Xbox in a long time. It used to be like you used to have to buy like a game a month, right? I'm a gamer, so you go and you buy a game a month. Now it's like I'll buy a game every 4, 5, 6 months, sometimes once a year, once or twice a year. That's what's happening here. And so it's interesting to see as things become more connected. I know this is off the topic of PWAs, but it's still the same type of thing, right? It's things are becoming more connected, things are becoming more accessible. The things that are mundane, if you will, in terms of computing, like transferring text and stuff like that, is becoming to the point where it's like, just use the browser for that, don't install the app. And then the heavier applications like Lightroom and stuff is like, well, you better install the app. Now, so very slowly, we might see some of those things become mundane in terms of the computing power required. And it might be like, oh, editing photos is a joke, don't worry about it. Editing 4K video is a joke, don't worry about it. You don't need a lot of power, don't worry about it. Whether that's offloaded onto the cloud or whether our processors and our GPUs get so powerful it doesn't matter, but that is what's happening. My first hard drive was 10 gigs. I was looking at because I have no USB sticks. Apparently an elf came and took every USB stick I've ever owned, which was like 300 of them, and they're all gone. So I was like, man, should I buy another USB stick? And I'm trying to think to myself, no, I should probably get a portable Samsung SSD. Well, the not the crappiest model, but the smallest model, 500 gig. Like, 500 gig. Mm-hmm. 10 gig. I started on 10 gigs.
Yep.
I'm not an old man. Neither of us are, So this is, I know this is just a PWA talk, or like that's where it stemmed, but this is like a big innovation. Like this is like an app. This is like mobile apps all over again. Mobile apps used to be a joke. Look, it looks like my screen is cracked. Remember those apps? Now look at them. They're all over the damn place. You don't even need to bring your wallet sometimes. You just freaking pay with your phone. I paid on my watch the other day.
There's also ID apps, so you can put your driver's license in an app. You definitely don't have to bring your phone then.
Like that's, that's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot going on. A lot of innovation is happening. Now with COVID, even more innovations happening for online stuff. So it's like everything's kind of the driving force is getting there. There is some scamming stuff, like you mentioned, all these subscriptions. Some of them are great. Some of them, you can get subscription overload at some point. I feel like I'm going to reach it at some point.
I've already hit it. Come on now.
Yeah, but like, it's just every deal is so, like, every time you look at it, it's so good because you're getting all these games for $15 a month or $10 a month or whatever, even $5 a month. The regular PC Microsoft Game Pass is $5 a month. That's a good deal. There's a lot of games in there. That's a damn good deal. Like, that's a damn good deal. Yeah, that's a damn good deal. The $15 a month for both of them is also a really, really good deal if you play a lot of games.
And it comes with Xbox Live Gold. Don't forget that.
Yeah,
that's what
I mean. Like it's a lot of value for your money. But you have to be a person that uses it. Like Matt, you play a lot of games. You get your money's worth out of it.
I'm getting my damn money's worth. Is right. Yeah.
Yeah. But I guarantee you that 95% of their base does not get their money's worth, and that's how they make money on the subscriptions. That's why subscriptions are so convenient for companies to do, is because a lot of the time people don't use them. It's why gym memberships are so expensive, and so gyms make a lot of money on them, because when they sell 1,000 gym memberships, only about 100 of those people are going to go into their gyms and actually use them. It's free money.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
Literally free money. That's what subscriptions are all about, right? Like it's about leveraging the community of people that aren't going to be using your product and supplying it for the people that are. I mean, sorry. I don't want to say all subscriptions, but that is a subscription model that a lot of people go and use, and could be a detrimental one for a lot of people, because again, people subscribe for something and then you just never use it.
Well, one prime example thing is I bought my parents play very casual games, and so literally for like Christmas or something, if they're low on games because they just rip through them, I'll be like, hey, pick out, because their games are cheaper, pick out 10, 20, 30 games, I don't care, and just like put them all in the cart, and I'll just buy them because they're digital, right? They kind of have like a Steam-ish thing. It's not actually Steam, it's whatever game launcher they have. And when I buy it, it says, well, you could pay $100 and X dollars, or you could pay $83 if you sign up for a subscription. And so what happens is, and I just did it, I forgot to friggin' unsubscribe after that first month, and I got to friggin' paid an extra $8 or whatever it was.
Yep.
But I mean, I still saved, so I don't really care. Last night I've never tried an audiobook. Never tried an audiobook in my life. So I was like, I'll try an audiobook, sure. Sure enough, freaking Audible. Oh, here's your first month free.
It's a great deal.
Well, I'm not
Audible's an amazing deal, but you forget. I always forget about my Audible subscription.
Damn.
Because I don't need an audiobook a month. I don't listen to that many audiobooks.
I'm not. I just wanted the 2 free credits, and then I'm gonna. Well, I say that I'm gonna unsubscribe this month. I'm probably gonna freaking forget, but I'm gonna unsubscribe this month, and then I'll just buy them if I like them. I've listened to like 10 minutes of one book, But
yeah.
But yeah.
Audiobooks are actually pretty awesome. On a completely side note topic, when I was driving a lot, I was listening to a lot. Or when I was flying a lot, I was listening to a lot of audiobooks. They're a fantastic way to spend the time when you don't want to look down at a page or look at a screen.
I used it last night to fall asleep to, and I don't know if that's a good idea, because then I'm going to miss a bunch of concepts and be falling asleep. But put on the sleep timer and that type of thing, and that's what I used it for. But yeah, like, I mean, things are just getting to the point where, I mean, Audible, like, it has a Windows app, but it could, I mean, I haven't checked if it does, but it could just be a web app. And that, and playing music or whatever used to be a big thing. You used to have that Windows Media Player and all this other crap. Now you don't need to worry about any of that. It's just mundane, super easy, whatever. Play it online if you want, like, whatever. But yeah, I think that concludes the old episode. Unless you have anything to add there, Mike.
Nope. I think that concludes it.
That concludes it. So thank you for listening, and make sure you don't miss an episode by subscribing on the platform of your choice. You can follow us on those socials via @HTML all the things. That's on Facebook and Instagram. You can also follow us on Twitter, which is @HTML everything. We're on Medium, and we're on that GitHub. And remember, we're also on Patreon. That's patreon.com/HTML all the things. Check out those tiers and give them a go. And many thanks to our $3 tier patron, Sean from Rabbit Works JavaScript. Find him at youtube.com/RabbitWorksJavaScript. Garrick from Local Path Computing and Web Design. Find him at localpathcomputing.com. Craig, a.k.a. Cosworth. Ryan Gatchell from Blue Black Digital. Find him at blueblackdigital.com. Chris from Self-Made Web Designer. Find him at selfmadewebdesigner.com. Tim from The Web Hacker. Find him at thewebhacker.com. And DL Ford from dlford.io. Feel free to leave a comment or a review on the platform that you're listening to this on. And we are signing off.